Supervisors, please take your seats. So join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Roll call of supervisors, please. Supervisor Underhill is excused. Supervisor Arrington is excused. And I'm guessing Supervisor Grady was the third one who mentioned to me he wouldn't be here this evening. All are excused. 25 in attendance. First order of business, citizen comments. Citizens, anyone wishing to address the board, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address and speak into the microphone.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It's Jack Rose, 4315 68th Street. And once again, I'm here. I was here last week, and just to talk about the whole issue of income maintenance. And the items that are being proposed by the state will take a plan such as we have here in Kenosha County and try to funnel that into a call center. And for people, the elderly, the blind, and disabled, the call center is not the right answer. And it will not work in all these cases. And despite monies that will be saved and FTEs that will be reduced, this is going to be a real disservice to the people that use this. And we really need to do all we can to try to maintain an excellent program that we have here in Kenosha County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Hello, my name is Deborah Ramsdale. I live at 1005 58th Street, Upper Kenosha. My problem is I tried the call center. I get one person that tells me to call back to another number. I call that number back, I wait 40 minutes, and they hang up on me. I call back, and then it's 5 o'clock, and they say call back the next day. I can't keep doing this. They keep discontinuing my benefits at the end of the month. In a 3-month period, they have discontinued my benefits twice, and I am on disability. Something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Teresa Hannes, 2631 32nd Street. Tonight I'm here supporting the proposed resolution to locally retain the income maintenance positions which Governor Walker is proposing in his budget to privatize with an extended call center in Madison. My concern is trifold. First, for the loss of the local county jobs. I've been doing the job for 30 years. It's a needed job. Second, for the impact on the county budget for the Department of Human Services, but mostly for the participants, your constituents, that need our program and our services. Our agency is their local safety net. Without local access, they will be waiting on hold for extended periods of time, applying online and confused by the questions, delays in processing their benefits, or their cases just close, all of which will have an impact on our community. Tonight I just would like to share a few numbers that you may not be aware of. Currently we serve 14,480 unduplicated cases, which equates to 37,000 individuals receiving services in our community. The services they receive are W-2, food share, Badger Care, nursing home, Medicaid, child care only. This number equates to 25% of Kenosha County's population, if we look at Kenosha County having 150,000 people. Total incoming calls at the County Job Center for January, February, and March of this year was 64,831 for a daily average of 1,029. These are calls coming into the main console. In addition, there are other calls that are directly made to our local call center that is staffed by county workers, giving immediate answers to their questions and processing the changes, resolving the issues for the participants. In addition, there are calls directly made to workers' individual phones. These calls are not included in the above number of 64,831. General reception transactions of people walking through our door requiring services: January 6,834, February 5,238, it was a short month, and March 6,865, totaling 18,937. Trust me, the need for local service exists, and I see it on a daily basis. These numbers for general reception don't include people using our satellite agency at 45 and 50 or coming into the aging department. This is just a quick summary of our local need in our community. These participants deserve the best service, and personally, the Job Center gives them the best service. All this work is accomplished with 25 workers timely and efficiently. As workers, we know the community we live in. We know where to make referrals to assist them when they are struggling to get by. We can be hands-on when they're confused with the programs and tell them what services are available. We collaborate with DHFS, Child Support, the Health Department, and other local agencies. We get the job done, and the participants receive their entitled benefit. Personally, I care about my participants and the community I live in. I wouldn't do this job as long as I have done it if I didn't care for these people. I don't want them getting lost in a state ESC center and not being treated as a member of a community where they apply for services. They should be afforded the opportunity to talk to someone in person and know that that person knows the community and the program. Circumstances can change in a heartbeat for any of us, for our families, our friends, our neighbors, and all our citizens. And we need to maintain that local presence for people who may not be familiar with it, where they can go and have their questions answered. On a positive note, since we started all of this, there has been some talk of an alternative plan allowing for some services to remain local. However, who knows what proposals and plans will be developed, and that is why I'm asking you tonight to support this resolution. Keep the work local, keep the money in our budget locally, and let's continue to do the good job that we do at the Job Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roberta Bloner, 3835 16th Street. Tonight you will vote on a resolution to send to the state to keep income maintenance with county employees. It will be devastating for Medicaid and food share applicants to have to apply for benefits through a centralized system over the internet or by the phone. The point I want to make to you all, that could be a real cost for Kenosha County if the IM work is taken away. Medicaid eligibility is quite complicated, especially for people who are elderly, blind, or disabled. Communication between the IM workers, the clients, local social workers at nursing homes, hospitals, assisted livings, and from long-term care programs are needed to complete and maintain Medicaid eligibility. If clients don't get their proper benefits timely, the cost to the county would include a number of items. For instance, if people with mental illness don't receive their medications, they could end up in the Institute for Mental Disease, which the counties would be liable to pay for. They could also go into jails, and uninsured people overall could end up in the local hospital emergency rooms, and that care costs everybody more money when it comes to planning for costs for health insurance. Also, when indigent people pass away, if they're not on Medicaid and they need Medicaid to pay for their funerals, if there's a local worker, we can do those eligibilities within the same day and give an answer, saving the county from paying for funerals for those people. Another area is in the guardianship program. People who have legal guardians and are protectively placed by the county, their placements have to be paid for, and if there's no funding in place, if there's no, if the wards don't have their own assets, then the county is responsible to pay for those placements. By having Medicaid in place and local ES workers who can maintain that eligibility, those costs can be shifted to Medicaid rather than the county. Also, some people who need guardians don't have family members to become their legal guardians, so they rely on corporate guardians. And those corporate guardians send a bill every month for their services. Through Medicaid, we can offset those costs to come out of the person's income, and thereby having Medicaid pay more of their costs. That would also save the county money, because if we don't have the local contact to have all of those issues communicated effectively and locally, those things will cost the county money. So please, I'm asking if you could vote yes for the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Any other citizen comments? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Announcements of the chairman. I just have a couple. The WCA meeting is coming up in September. I'd like you to, it's at the Wisconsin Dells. If you have an interest in attending that conference, I don't know that information has been mailed out to everybody as yet, but you will be receiving something, I would assume, in the mail here relatively shortly. Let me know. I will, we'll talk about attendance, who will attend, numbers, determine what we think will be in the best interest of representation from the county across the board, and make a decision based on that. Last week we passed out the, I passed out the committee assignments. I failed to say, and I want to ask you this evening to stick around after the organizational meeting to get together quickly with your committees, elect the chair and vice chair, and confirm your meeting date. If there is going to be a change to the meeting date, we need to make sure we let the clerk know what that's going to be. So if you'll get that to me, I will update that schedule and get it emailed to the clerk then tomorrow. To my knowledge, there isn't any conflict between committees right now, based on what I've seen anyhow. But I'd like you to get together if possible. That way we'll have the structure in place before the 1st of May, which is what I'd like to see done. Also then, the chair of the committee, if you'll reach out to the department head oversight for that particular committee. And I think we only have one committee that's changed chairman, so I'd ask Supervisor Noble and Rose to get together and talk a little bit so that transition can take place. But get in touch with your department overhead. There's committees that have merged. I think you want to give some thought to how you pull those agendas together and how you work through that process. That's all I have. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Jeff Gintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just give a brief report here. Joint Services met this afternoon, and we have modified slightly our criteria for going out for a new director. We are going to be doing that this weekend, and there will be 2 weeks after that. And then at that point, they will be evaluated and interviews will be held. So that's just a little time schedule on that. We did approve the contract for the interim director for Sue Marcinkus to come back till the end of July while we transition through this. So that if anybody has any questions about joint services or this report, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Overman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After the meetings here this evening, if we could have the new members and old members of Highway and Facilities, I believe it's called now, we'll meet over in this corner and do just as you asked. Our meeting is going to still be the original timing of Highway and Parks, which is the first Monday, and it'll be at 6:30 at the County Center for the new formed committee. Another item I just wanted to address briefly was an article that was in the paper this morning about snow plowing. They were talking about our plows, 19 of our plows being out, I believe it was yesterday morning. You know, I was out at 6 o'clock in the morning there on Highway P where this alleged incident occurred, and there was definite slush building up on the road. I think what maybe was the dumbfounded moment for this motorist was it's April, and you're not used to seeing a snowplow out in April, but there was slush. The conditions were just properly followed. The procedure was followed by Mr. Sipsma, who I would never second guess. The road temperatures were at freezing. Slush was building. Here it was 6 o'clock on Monday. At 7 o'clock, you have all the high school kids driving to school. an assessment is made by our foreman in pickup trucks, as the article stated Walworth County did, but they said their road temperatures were 33 degrees. And all our staff is on duty, so there was no special splurging of our finances. Interestingly enough, from the Pell Lake Drive, which is half mile from Highway P there, to Elkhorn in Walworth County, on that morning, there was 5 cars off of Highway 12 due to icy road conditions. So I personally saw 2 off, one on Highway Z, one on Highway F. So I applaud Mr. Sipsman for having our people out. If we didn't have our people out and road conditions would have been 2 degrees colder, we had multiple accidents, he'd have been criticized. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Kubicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Legislative Committee, as we know it, met for the last time this evening. We had a report on Corporation Council's budget, which is on course for staying on target of their current budget as of today. At this time, I'd like to also thank the supervisors and youth and governance members for their valuable contributions and dialogue on matters dealing with the legislature during their service for the past year on the Legislative Committee. As we go forward, we'll continue to look for legislative issues that could be brought forth to the Executive Committee for recommendations and referrals. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to also comment on that Highway Department. I want to thank them for doing their job and protecting our citizens. I thought when I read that article, it just takes one person to hit a tree and die, and then they'll say, where were they? So in your packet, lumped into the closeout resolution, there was the general fund ended the year up, anticipated to end up at about 7.7 million, up about 1.4, 1.5 million. All through the year we've been reporting, thinking we're going to come in at 6.2, 6.3. Pleasant surprise here. Just some of the highlights. Federal inmate revenue up 964,000. Mid-year levy reduction over $1 million. Health insurance 1.7 million. Human services a surplus of about 845,000. Some areas where we had some challenges. Sales tax revenues were down by 750,000. We had an increase in outstanding tax delinquencies at 476,000, which is lower than we were previously reporting and anticipating. Brookside deficit of 660,000. We've at the Finance Committee, we've asked for a detailed evaluation and report on that. Certainly the concern is that we had a deficit last year. It is attributable to the census, and we have a mix of Medicare, which is what we hired a coordinator to come in and get that number up to 25. I think we're budgeting 30 this year. They did accomplish that. The private pay is where the shortfall they are attributing that to, and we have, which is our private pay primarily pays for our cost per day, and then the Medicaid is where we are funding it. So the Medicaid has been the fill on our census. So that's what they attribute that to. We are going to have a report in the Finance Committee at our next meeting. My concern, our concern is, what does this mean going forward? I was just given a preliminary number tonight that they will report to us that the first quarter finances, the bottom line for Brookside at the first quarter is just over break even. It's at about $7,000. So last September, when I reported to you on the second quarter numbers, I reported that we were at 49.6% of our revenues, and I thought we were coming on pace. There were, I'm trying to verify whether there were 2 reports. One of them came in, I am told, during the budget hearing. I don't recall that. And then another one. So they certainly, the department indicated that there's been disclosure at the Brookside board may have been reported to Human Services Committee. I was somewhat taken aback when I saw the number, but we're going to evaluate it, and the concern is going forward. Overall, good news for Kenosha County at a time when counties are struggling to balance their budget, to protect their general fund. We came in at a surplus. I know our bonding, the raters, they will take a look at that favorably. As you know, we have a general fund target of 17%. This puts us at 12.34%, but for the uncontrollable tax delinquencies in since 2005, we would be at 18.5%. So when the tax delinquencies turn around, our general fund will be at a position of strength, and we are certainly looking at strategies in this upcoming year to enhance the general fund. We had a report on the treasurer's revenues for the first 2 months of the year. It appears that their revenues, that is from investments, which is small, but unfortunately from tax delinquencies, our revenues are up $355,000 from budgeted. The Register of Deeds revenues are coming in just ahead of budget. They really attribute that not to more transactions or more recording fees, but to, as you recall, the fees were increased this year. But again, we are ahead of budget in that area. So at this point, I haven't heard anything negative. It's early in the year, but we're going to continue to monitor it. Thank you.
Supervisor Clark, I know there's been some discussion with the Treasurer's Office about looking for ways to improve the delinquency situation. Any further discussion or new approaches, thoughts? Is that an ongoing dialogue?
At this point, I really don't know. I know that they're in continuous contact trying to collect the money, but unfortunately, you can't get blood out of a turnip. People are going through some very challenging times right now.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Eckerness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week I announced that our redistricting meeting would be April 25th at the Kenosha County Center. Kenosha County Center is not available all week, so the 25th meeting will be on the second floor conference room here, and at that meeting we will set the meeting date for the first public hearing that we have to hold on redistricting, which would probably be the following week if we can get the center. Thank you.
That's April 25th?
April 25th, next Monday.
At what time?
6:30.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights. Clerk.
Old business, reconsideration of Ordinance 20 by Supervisor Noble regarding repeal of Municipal Code of Kenosha County 3.011D regarding elimination of per diem.
Supervisor Noble.
I would like to reconsider the elimination of per diem, and if I get a second, I'll explain why.
Motion by Supervisor Noble to reconsider Ordinance 20, I believe, correct? Second by Supervisor Grulich. Supervisor Noble.
Yes, I was on the prevailing side for the elimination of the per diem, and I supported the elimination of the per diem because as the chairman of the administration committee, we as a committee supported it, and I supported it in committee. And generally, to be consistent, I would and I did support it on the county board floor, but in committee we had a number of topics that we had brought up, one of which was the increase of the salary by $100 a month, which that failed. So, you know, in hindsight, as I was driving home, I was thinking, you know, things changed. I really should have changed my vote. And had I changed my vote, it would have been a 14-14 vote, which would have meant that it would have, the elimination of the per diem would have failed, and it would still be in effect. So my vote would have made a difference, and that's why that's one of the reasons why I'm reconsidering tonight. I've never really been what I would call a quick thinker, and I'm probably one that needs to process what I hear and from what people were saying that night. That's why I like the committee system, where we go to committee and then we actually have an opportunity to, you know, vote on it days later at the county board level. But I listened to the people speaking, and really the arguments were pretty solid that we should keep per diem in place. I can remember back in the day when I only had 2 weeks vacation, and I was on the county board, and I was actually on finance committee and chairman of the county board at one time, and I remember taking no paid days from work because I didn't have any vacation left, and the only thing I really got for that day was the $100 per diem. I remember also when I was Supervisor Hallman's age, I would have desperately needed the $100 myself because I was a poor man when I was his age. I mean, I just listened to all the arguments, even the argument about it being a heirloom from the past or whatever that argument was. Well, our youngest supervisor was in support of it, so it can't be that archaic if our youngest supervisor thinks it's a good policy. We have proper checks and balances in place. It takes the chairman of the committee or the chairman of the county board to approve it. I don't think it's been abused as of late. The only thing that I would suggest, and I wouldn't suggest doing it tonight, but I think the chairman may assign whoever the oversight committee would be for this to tweak a couple things in the ordinance, like cutting the number of per diems days down from 24 to 12. I think that would be appropriate, but throwing the entire per diem package out, I think would be not appropriate at this time. So I would move to reconsider, and I would hope that some of those that voted to eliminate it would reconsider it with me and vote to keep it in place tonight. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge this board this evening to reject the attempt to revisit this whole compensation issue. The compensation issue has been debated in committee and in this board on many occasions. We talked about the salary. The board made a decision to retain the salary as is. The board talked about insurance. We rejected continuation of the insurance program. We talked about per diem, and it was decided that, yes, it was a relic of the past that should not continue in the future, and the board rejected it. Now, this has consumed considerable time, thought, and effort, and it has been publicized time and again in the newspaper in the form of letters to the editor. There have been editorials on this whole issue of compensation, and I ask you, how much more are you willing to take here? How much more discussion is necessary? I don't know what there is to reconsider here. I don't know what arguments are left to be said. Let's just leave this alone. I urge you, don't revisit this issue. If you bring this issue up, here we go again on this whole thing, which does not enhance the reputation or stature of the board in the community. We've decided the compensation issue. Let us proceed on the many issues that face this county and new issues and find solutions to them. But let's not revive relics of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Just for point of clarification, we are going to vote on the issue of reconsideration before we vote on the issue itself, in case anyone is questioning the procedure here. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've been on this for quite a few years, and I know things have changed. I know that it's not abused anymore, and a lot less per diems are taken. My big issue years ago was that the simple fact, what I tried to get through was if you didn't miss a day of work, you didn't get a per diem, and that was voted down. Now, I'd like to see something like that if you're going to try to stick these per diems back in, because most of them at that time were taken by people that weren't missing work. That was my big issue. It was very abused. Supervisor Rose mentioned the other items here, and these are three separate issues. Trying to get something back here, the $100 a month that we proposed for an increase in the future term supervisors. That was voted down. That was voted down. Let's forget that. Don't try to get it back with a per diem here. The insurance was voted down. I find it very interesting that a lot of people that voted to keep the per diems are many of them that were the big pushers to get rid of the health insurance for the county board. Is it that they found a way that they kind of like those per diems, or first thing that they learned on the county board was how to get a per diem? I've personally left about $40,000 on the table here since I've been on the county board in per diems, because I felt if I wasn't missing work, and even when I was paid enough. And the other thing I was paid enough in was the county health insurance, so I felt guilty if I went and took a per diem. So if that's your cause here, you certainly shouldn't vote to continue per diems here on the county board. Thank you.
All right, I have already allowed this to get into the discussion on the issue, and we have one other light on the board. I guess I'll let it continue in the hopes that after we vote on the referral or the reconsideration issue, we don't go back and revisit it. Supervisor Clark.
I'm going to support the reconsideration, not that I'm going to use the per diem. There's plenty of times I could have used it, could have turned it in, never did. I think someone said this was a $2,500 issue in last year's budget. It's $10,000 in the budget. I think maybe there was $2,500 that was used. I appreciate the fact that some of these supervisors are willing to go to seminars and meetings on behalf of the county, and if they feel that they need it, they should get it. I promised last time, as we're gutting this thing called county board compensation, that I would bring another resolution forward, and I didn't, and it was during this debate. As long as we're gutting this thing, let's gut the mileage as well, and I'll bring a resolution forward. You want to get rid of this? Fine. Next agenda, there will be a resolution here. It's an equity thing. If someone's going to go above and beyond, so be it. It's not a material thing. Let's not stake our claim on an archaic thing, and let's get on with business. Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, the issue before you is a motion to reconsider Ordinance 20. Roll call requested. P and plus means you're in favor of reconsidering the vote. All right, give that a try, please. Motion to reconsider passes, Frank? Simple majority, correct? All right, before you is reconsideration of Ordinance 20. For clarity, what's before you is to repeal 20. So if you are in favor of repealing 20, you'll vote P and plus. If you're in favor of keeping ordinance as it currently is, which keeps per diem in place, you will vote P and negative. Anyone disagree with that? What's before you is to repeal Ordinance 20, which eliminates the per diem. So if you are in favor, as I stated, of eliminating the per diem, you will vote P and plus. If you are in favor of keeping the per diem in place, you will vote P in negative. Supervisor Clark.
Can we just do this so yes means yes, you want to keep the per diem in place, and no means no?
You cannot, unless Corporation Counsel wants to tell me that there is a way to change the verbiage of the ordinance before you.
I've seen a lot of confusion on simple votes on the board here.
I'll clarify it one more time. Okay. This strikes to the referendum question, right? Yes means no, no means yes. Supervisor Rose, do you have a point of information?
Speak on the motion. I do understand what you're saying.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, thank you. I was the proponent of the repeal and urge your support of the ordinance repeal this evening, ordinance number 20 before you. I ask you this question. What is your salary for? The $6,000. It's to do the job. This per diem was originated in some other era, which just isn't applicable here today. What was the salary at the time the per diem was offered? Something probably considerably less, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that $6,000 is adequate here. You rejected the idea of a pay increase. You supported the idea of insurance abolition. I see no reason why we should retain this idea of per diem. What is that in relationship to? If you look at what has been authorized here and what is authorized in the budget, and it's certainly not something that is equally or even equitably distributed. If you want to go about seeking a pay increase, then propose it. It was proposed, the board rejected it. I see no reason to revisit that issue in the form of a so-called per diem, which strikes me as sort of a sneaky way of slipping by a pay increase without really saying so, without really telling the taxpayers where you stand. So I would urge your support of the repeal of the idea of this per diem. You voted that way before. I urge you to sustain that vote tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else who doesn't want to revisit the issue want to talk? Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you well know, I voted initially to keep the per diem, and there were other things that night that I voted down. The logic being that there are some among us who are fairly well off, and the Lord has blessed them where they can take a day off of work without experiencing any significant hardship, them or their families. There are others of us, certainly where that is not the case. I would be one such said person, and I realize that the case could be made that in my position, to make the argument to keep the per diem could be seen as selfish. I realize that argument could be made. But I was hoping that maybe we could urge for some sort of fairness. And I understand that there are people who are a little upset, who feel that we should go about this a different way. And I respect that. I respect that a great deal. But I also want to close by applauding the outgoing chair of the administration committee for standing up publicly and saying that he had reconsidered it, that he'd thought it over, that he delved a little bit deeper and come to a different conclusion. It's not easy to do that in this room, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Holman. Supervisor Noble.
I want to just say in answer to a question, I did research it a little bit. The ordinance dates back to, the per diem ordinance dates back to October 16th of 1979, and the $100 per diem became effective in 1988. So it's been $100 since 1988, and I don't know if you consider that another era, but it's been around since then.
Thank you, Supervisor Noble. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am very happy that Supervisor Noble brought this back. This is an ordinance. I think we need the per diem. The per diem, as Supervisor Clark has brought up, is a small fraction of the county budget. It's an instrument, and I don't really see it as a form of salary. It basically subsidizes individuals and compensates them to some degree when they miss work. We've argued and we've talked on the county board floor about our positions. We have a unique position being a county board supervisor. We're paid $6,000. Our meetings, majority are at night. Very seldom do we meet during the day because the majority of us, I think, except for the retirees, have to work during the day. That's how we support ourselves. So when we don't work during the day, we have to figure out a way to support ourselves. So I think to some degree this does give us some compensation, which I think is fair. I mean, we're in meetings. Joint services met this afternoon, or earlier this evening, And it was very unique. There were some comments made about the front page of the Kenosha News, how they had the salaries of different individuals from the city and certain from the county. And it was amazing that this committee, Joint Services, has about 8 individuals. 4 of the individuals that were in the meeting were on the front page. And then you have county board supervisors and aldermen who are, their salaries are substantially lower. And I'm not trying to criticize our employees or anything like that, but it's unique because this is a position on the county board where we're expected to work and do our due diligence, and I think we do a very good job. And when you look at the compensation, it's very low. And I know I'm not going to reiterate, Supervisor Rose made some valid points about the salary and in the past and the other ordinance to raise our salary. But I think this is a unique situation, and I'd urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kohlmeyer.
Yes, I don't know if it's possible given the current wording of the ordinance, but I'd like to make a motion to make an amendment to cap this at 12 days, as Supervisor Noble proposed.
The question I'm going to ask, I believe you're getting ready to address, is can you make an amendment on a reconsideration?
You can. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult given the fact that you're looking to eliminate the entire ordinance. And I think maybe a better way to do it would be to make a substitute resolution. The way that would work is like this. You would move to substitute Ordinance 20, which calls for a repeal of the entire ordinance, with a resolution that would continue the language in the ordinance with the exception that you have. Then the process is that the chair would ask for any amendments, any further amendments to Ordinance 20, which could include, for example, you could amend Ordinance 20 to eliminate 4 paragraphs and keep the 5th, something like that. If there are none, then the chair would consider any further amendments to your substitute resolution. And once those are done, then you would vote on which of the two to take. That might be a little bit clearer. I know it sounds a little confusing in terms of what I just said, but I'm not sure that it would be any less confusing than trying to amend the current resolution that is up for reconsideration. Unless maybe the way you would trying to think of a way to do that, it would be to your amendment would be to what did you want to change? Just the number? 24 to 12. 24 to 12. You could try making an amendment to eliminate.
That's fine. I can rescind it for right now. I didn't mean to cause too much trouble. I thought my idea was last time. I had thought about making that amendment last meeting just as a compromise to keep the issue of somebody trying to abuse this in check. I thought that might have been a good solution. Since Supervisor Noble suggested, I thought it might be a good compromise. Or we can leave the vote as it is for now if it's going to be too much trouble.
Is that your position? You want to rescind your motion?
Is it going to be too hard to do?
If you want, you could move to amend the current resolution 20 to eliminate all of the strikeout on there with the exception of the number of per diems, and then to change the number from 24 to 12 or whatever it was you were doing. That might be another way to do it. Maybe that's a simpler way to do
Okay, I'll still make that motion. Eliminate
by-
all the strikeouts except for the 24 to going down to
Motion by
12.
Supervisor Kohlmeyer to eliminate all of the strikeouts on Ordinance 20 and modify the 24 meetings in total to read 12 meetings in total. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Kohlmeyer, anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree with a lot of the points made. I don't think this is a huge budget issue, and I think it's something that you want to encourage people that if they have to take off a day from work that they're losing income, that they could get reimbursed somehow from the county if they're doing a service to the county. I don't see this, a lot of people I know, there's some of us that do a lot more meetings than others. I've only been to one meeting during the day where I've had to take off of work. I know there's been others that have taken off more, and I think they should get reimbursed if they're taking off time from work. But I also think we should cap this so this is not being abused. I totally agree with that. We can't let somebody, and I guess I didn't realize it was 24 at first, but I thought 12, that was my number last meeting because I thought one day a month, that seemed pretty reasonable to me. And I mean, it wouldn't have to be taken one a month, but that seems like a reasonable number that could be a tolerance level. That's all.
Thank you, Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor, state your point.
In regards to that top paragraph, do we have to remove the word repealed?
You would say is hereby amended. The County Board does ordain that Municipal Code of Kenosha County 3.011D dealing with additional compensation for the County Board is hereby amended. That would have to be part of his Supervisor Kohlmeyer's motion, and I think that's how he made it, to amend the current ordinance to go from 24 to 12.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Any other points or questions? It needs to be a point, or I'm going to go to whomever's next on the board. I think Supervisor Singer, if you have a point. The motion was 12 for the supervisors. Modify the 24 to 12. Supervisor Noble, state your point.
The same point. It says 36 for chairman. Does he want to modify that?
His motion was to modify 24 to 12. If someone wants to put words into his mouth, it'll have to come out of your own as an amendment. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
No, I want to speak on after it's been amended.
I will allow some latitude here. Before you speak, just for the record, that is the procedure here. The motion was clearly 24 to 12. It has nothing to do with the supervisor or the chairman taking per diem, because generally speaking, in my tenure here, I have not. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Okay, so we're talking about the motion. What I did was go down to the clerk's office and find, how was the per diem used, and $2,550 was spent all of last year. And if you looked at the budget, $4,300 was spent in 2009. And I can remember, unfortunately, I can remember back when $100 used to cover a day's pay when I was on, but it certainly doesn't now. And I saw that a lot of the supervisors that used it obviously have jobs. So I'm going to support this because I think it at least rewards some of the people who are willing to put their own time in. They're going to lose some pay. Some of them are. Those that don't have a job don't have to take it, but I certainly can see the supervisors who do work getting some compensation to putting in the extra time.
Thank you. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, are we now talking about a substitute ordinance?
Sure.
That's what the motion was here.
We're talking about, the motion was made to amend the resolution before you to eliminate all of the strikes and change the word 24 to 12, as well as change the word repealed to amended.
Okay. Can we make another amendment?
You cannot make an amendment on an amendment.
On this one, I can't, no.
Correct. After this amendment is voted upon, you may make another amendment if you so choose.
Thank you, that's all.
Supervisor Clark.
$2,450. We are wasting a lot of time. This is a non-issue 24-12-36-8. Whether you're working, which is coming next, or whether you're retired, it's a waste of time. Let's get on with it. Let's get on to the business at hand. We're just wasting time. We're trying to follow spaghetti noodles through here. Let's get on with the business. This is a waste of time. It's confusing. Let's get on with it. And we're just wasting a lot of time. This is not an issue. I'm not going to support 24-12, whatever the heck the number is. Let's just either repeal this thing or not and get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Singer.
I was just wondering if the maker of the amendment would make a change for the chairman position. It's not the chairman himself, it's the chairman position. Sorry, you took it as that.
I didn't. I was clarifying my comment, not your comment.
All right.
My comment.
Great. Okay. But if the maker of the motion would make that change as a friendly change to your motion. And what would you want to reduce that to?
Hold on a second. We're not, you know. All right. What's that? Yeah. You know, if you guys want a 5-minute recess to see what tie you're going to wear next week or debate this issue, I offer you to suggest you do it. Supervisor Kohlmeyer, do you want to make a motion?
Can I make that 24 from 36?
Perfectly round number for me. Is there would the second agree? Sure. 24 to 12, 36 to 24. Anything else, Supervisor Kohlmeyer?
Nope.
I seeing no other lights. I'm going to make my best attempt. Pardon me? My best attempt to clarify this. Before you is a motion to amend the repeal. It will be amended to keep the per diem as it is currently, changing 24 meetings for supervisors to 12 and 36 meetings for county board chairman to 24. Now you are voting only on the amendment. So a yes means you support the amendment. No means you do not. Any questions on that? I trust a roll call is requested. P and plus if you're in favor of the amendment, P and minus if you're opposed. $25. 15-10. The amendment carries. We are now voting on the ordinance as amended, which now yes means yes, no means no. It's a little different than before, where no meant yes and yes meant no. As amended, what you are now going to vote on is simply modifying the current per diem, 12 to 20, ordinance, 12 to 24, 36 to 24. It will stay in place. So yes means you support keeping the per diem at the new numbers. No means you continue to support elimination of the per diem. Clear? Supervisor Decker.
Does yes means we want to at 24 and 12?
Correct.
No would mean we want
Other way around, 12 and 24, but go ahead.
Right. No would mean we want to keep it the way it is right now with not repealed. That's what it means. Not that we're repealing it.
Correct. I'm sorry, correct. Did I say repeal? You're correct. It would keep it the way it is because it's been amended.
So we would not change it. It's like the vote last week did not happen. Correct?
Correct.
Because this is a motion to reconsider. So either way, we either stay with 24 and 36 if we vote no, and we go with 12 and 24 if we vote yes. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Everybody clear? No, there's not another vote.
There's not another vote to repeal?
I don't need to know how you're going to vote if that's all right. Supervisor Edelman, you got a point?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've got the motion on the floor now, or the ordinance is on the floor as changed.
Correct.
But don't we have discussion as it sits now?
Yes. Did I jump the gun again? Must have a date. I'm going to clear the board. My apologies. I will clear the board. Let's see, stop the vote. All right. Would you like to speak on the?
Yes, I would.
On the ordinance as amended.
As amended. I'd like to offer an amendment as amended at the bottom of the ordinance number 20, where it finishes off, per diem will not be paid for regularly scheduled meetings. I'd like to amend to add, or for days or 1/2 days when a supervisor is not missing a verifiable day of work compensated by an employer. I'd like to make that motion.
So in short, what you're saying is you need to miss work to qualify.
Correct.
Full day or half day?
Correct.
Is there a second to the amendment by Supervisor Overman? Is there a second? Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Supervisor Grulich.
Just basically got one simple question. Irregardless whether we vote this up or down, the per diem stays, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
The question is at what level now? You're correct. Supervisor Clerk.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I think this is out of order. I mean, now you haven't even had a vote to, you haven't even had a vote to repeal the action last week. But the agenda.
I understand your question.
The agenda said that the action was to repeal, not to amend. It was to repeal an action that happened last week.
Corporation
Counsel. What the agenda says is that you are reconsidering the repeal.
Correct.
So a motion was made to reconsider. That passed, so that what is now before the board is ordinance 20, just the way it was last week.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no lights, I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Again, to Supervisor Grulich's point, your options are twofold. One, to support by a no vote per diems as they are, or to support the per diem ordinance as amended, which is 24 to 12, 36 to 24. Clear? Hold on. I was voting and I hit the button. You'll need to be patient. 1 second. All right. Please vote. For those who push your button, I voted on the tally board instead of the... One more. Here we are. 14 to 9, the ordinance as amended has passed. Shall we move on?
So it's 12 and 24.
State your point.
You made a motion to reconsider. Did you make a motion to, you just substituted it then? Is that what happened here?
No, I thought that was one alternative under Robert's rules to go the substitution route. I thought that might have been a little bit clearer, but as I was explaining it, I could see that it was going to take a little bit of effort to go through that. So, on further, hate to belabor the word reconsideration on my part, I looked at Supervisor Kohlmeier's attempt here and tried to help him rephrase it, not in terms of a substitution, but in terms of an amendment. And the amendment was, okay, you have ordinance 20 in front of you. how could you possibly amend that? Well, one way you could do is to say, well, I'm gonna eliminate all the strikeout, and just, when it comes to 36, I'm gonna say 24, and when I see 24, that's gonna be 12.
But my problem with what happened, we made a motion to reconsider, so you bring it before on the board. But
Right,
you
'cause
didn't
if it had-
vote, you never, there was never a vote to say yes or no whether you wanted per diem. We had a vote, yes means it's this, yes at 24, and no means it's this at 36.
Right.
You never gave anybody here the opportunity to vote against it.
Yes, you did.
You did not.
Sure, you could have voted against Supervisor Kohlmeier's amendment.
That was the amendment.
You should have voted against it then.
Or
If
you
you
could've-
wanted to eliminate the per diem, you should have said, I don't care whether it's 24, I don't care if it's 36 or 48 or 52, whatever number you want, I don't want any part of it, I should vote against it.
Okay.
The vote was to reconsider. Once the reconsideration was on the floor, it was wide open for amendment. Clerk.
New business. Ordinance 23 from Land Use Committee regarding Bank Mutual Incorporated, 4949 West Brown Deer Road, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Metz Medical requests a comprehensive plan amendment from mixed-use district to governmental and institutional district in the town of Summers. Submitted by the Land Use Committee. Brunig, yes. Esposito, yes. Kohlmeier, yes. Underhill, yes. And Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move ordinance 23.
Ordinance 23 moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the second amendment to the comprehensive plan, which was the multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan for Kenosha County 2035, adopted by the Kenosha County Board on April 20th of 2010. This property is located on the southwest corner of 12th Street and 72nd Avenue. The ordinance will amend map 65, adopted land use map of Kenosha County 2035, of the comprehensive plan to change the land use category on the Bank Mutual Inc. property in the town of Summers from mixed use to governmental and institutional. This will allow for a request to change the zoning of this property from A2 General Agricultural District to I1 Institutional District for a specialized care facility. The town of Summers recommended approval of the request.
All right, at this point, because I hadn't paid attention to the agenda, so this will be the scandal for whomever wants to pick up on it and run with it. My office is actually providing architectural service for this client, so I'm going to pass the gavel to Vice Chairman Eckerness. I don't see any other lights.
Seeing no lights, are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, my apologies. I just didn't pick up on the name on the agenda.
Resolution 137 from Finance Committee, 2010-2011 carryover and annual closeout resolution, submitted by Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Singer, yes. Eckerness, yes. Jeff Gens, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 137.
Resolution 137 moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Clark.
This resolution is as it implies, an annual closeout. They're at the end of the year, they have to, there's projects that are not completed. We have the money appropriated for them, and we need to authorize to carry those over into next year. There is a summary that's attached here that pretty much goes through the various different changes. In a lot of cases, these items are just carrying a project forward. In some instances, dollars are being redirected. So there are, in the Sheriff's Department, they're redirecting to use $1,278, a small amount, for another purpose. In the Department of Public Works facilities, there's some dollars that are left over from major building maintenance projects that they want to use for energy reduction projects. We put an asterisk, and I'm looking at my committee one, but I think there's an asterisk on there that says that that reprogramming or that energy reduction program will go back to the committee for their approval as to how they're going, what that energy program entails. There was another redirection, if you will, in the highway department to buy a paver. They had some money left over that's down in the bottom of page 3. So they're going to buy a narrow paver that they're going to be able to use to, should the bike path funding come in place, use to pave the bike paths, use it to pave on the golf course. That will save a substantial amount of money. And it will also allow us to capitalize labor in the event that we use county employees to do it at a savings rather than outside contractors. Also, it gives us an opportunity of using our employees to do projects when maybe we may be in a situation of having to lay somebody off. So, number one, they can do it at a savings, keep our employees working. There are also several items that we're using reserve dollars for to reprogram. So when the 2010 books close and we had this 1.7 or $1.5 million surplus, we went from 6.2 to roughly 7.7. We're also designating some of those dollars, and when you see the reserve, we're designating some of those dollars for 2011. I think I'm saying that correct, Dave. In the Corporation Counsel's office, there's special legal counsel for bargaining that is using reserves. There's special legal counsel needed for this ETF, and that's the employee trust funds. We talked about that or reported on that previously. And there's reserve dollars being used to replace some valves in the public safety building. There's reserves being used for replace a plow truck in the job center, and that is really contingent upon only if there's a surplus of capital funds available. So they're funding that from capital reserves, and we're giving them the authorization to do that, not from general fund reserves. So in that instance, they're saying, if we find the money in the closeout to be able to do that, we're going to buy a truck. That wasn't capitalized, we discussed, or that wasn't in as part of the plan when we did the budget last year, because if you recall, we had that big snowstorm and that truck just died. So it was unanticipated, and that's how they're going to deal with that. So that's essentially what is happening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Clark. Supervisor Rose.
I think the board should focus some attention and discussion on the two large deficits. One, the Brookside deficit of some $660,000, and also the golf deficit of some $342,643. We have deficits running here of $1 million in Brookside and in the golf. And we've talked about golf almost every year, running a deficit for the last 10 years. And when you look at Brookside and golf, you have to look at them, I think, from a slightly different perspective than you would maintenance of roads, the Sheriff's Department, the County Clerk, the Treasurer, or numerous other services provided by Kenosha County. Those are services which are unique to government. There's no comparable in the private sector, as there is with golf and as there is with Brookside. So that the standard that you apply to a Brookside or to a golf has got to be the standard that you would apply to a private sector business. And applying that, these two would be out of business. They would be out of business. I see no plan here on the part of the Brookside director to rectify the situation. I brought the newspaper because I think it's worth quoting what she's quoted as saying in the newspaper, and she says it was not yet clear how Brookside will proceed with future budgeting. That should give you confidence that the deficits are here to stay. I don't think it's acceptable. If you look at the statistics, and the committee has looked at the statistics, the private pay is down. And I would suggest that what you're seeing here is going to be a trend for the future. Where is the plan to rectify this? If you see in private business that the revenues aren't coming in, do you continue with expenses as is? You don't. That's what they've done here. They have no plan to reduce expenses. That's what should have been done. Not at this particular time. It's too late. All you can do is pay the bill. And to suggest, as some say here, well, we've got the debt that we're paying on the buildings, and we've got the debt that we're still paying on the golf course, and those debts will be soon paid off. You know, that is not an excuse you can use in private business. If you can't make your mortgage payments, you can't make your bond payments, you can't pay your salaries, you can't say, well, if I didn't have all of these expenses, you know, I'd be making a lot of money. Well, those kinds of business end up in bankruptcy. And that's exactly what they are showing here tonight. We pay the Brookside director $114,000 plus every year, top county employee. I think we ought to expect more. The Human Services Committee was not advised, was not warned of this deficit coming. As a matter of fact, when we asked for some statistical information about a month ago before the committee, the response from the director was, well, I'm not prepared on that particular point. I didn't know that I was going to be asked that question. When you're running an institution like this, you have your ducks in order. You have your information there. You don't say, well, I'm not prepared. We're not asking this of some other lower level managerial employee. We're asking this of the top paid person. We expect more. The taxpayer expects more. We need a new business plan. The problem at the golf course is very simple. We don't have the demand for the number of holes that we have. We've got 2 golf courses. We have more holes that are necessary, and therefore the expenses are too high. And we hear the same excuses every year. It's the weather. Now, of course, that's the excuse we're going to hear. We got a late start. And now the mantra seems to be, I say, is, well, once we get the debt paid off, we're going to be in the red. Well, I don't buy that. I think we've got to say both to the golf leadership and the Brookside leadership, let's see that business plan. If it doesn't work at the end of 2011, we need new leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisors? Seeing none. Before you is carryover, 2010-2011 carryover, Resolution 137. Roll call. All those in favor, P and plus. Those opposed, P and minus. Motion carries 24-1. There's no objection. The record will show that Supervisor Kohlmeyer intended to vote in the affirmative, so it's 25-0. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Resolution 138 from Finance Committee, a resolution to authorize lease of land of vacant lots taken by tax deed. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Singer, yes. Ekron is yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 138.
Resolution 138 moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor Jeff Gens. Supervisor Clark.
This is a tax deeded parcel in the approximate vicinity of Roosevelt Road and 30th Avenue. The establishment Big Shots leases this parking lot from the county, or requested to lease it. They, I believe, leased it from the prior tenant, but having at least, we're generating a little bit of money. I believe it was $2,400 a year. Is that correct? And we don't have to maintain it or really do anything to it. If it was a parcel that we had, we would have to maintain it, control the weeds, and all of those things. So until we sell it, it doesn't prevent the clerk from following her procedures and selling the property. But in the meantime, we're collecting a small fee, number one, and number two, we're avoiding having to maintain the property. So I urge your support.
Thank you. Supervisor Holman.
Point of information, who would be the party that does the snow removal and the grass cutting and the removal of weeds?
I'm going to defer that to the clerk if she can answer it.
When we lease it, do you mean, or if we're not leasing it?
If we're not leasing it.
If we're not leasing it, we have a company that goes around and takes care of all the snow on all our properties, cuts the grass to make sure there's no garbage or debris thrown on it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Grulich.
My question is, through the chair, through corporate counsel, if we do lease this property, if something happens on this property, do we still have some liability there?
It would depend on the terms of the lease. We would have to incorporate something in the lease that would address
Because, well, one of my main concerns was a few years ago, there was a fight outside that everyone knows about, and if something like that were to happen in the parking lot, you know, is that something that we could potentially be held liable for? And if so, I'd like to make an amendment to add that they have proper insurance for an occasion of such.
The amendment would be in order, but normally we would incorporate something like that, some type of an indemnification or hold harmless in the lease.
Certainly, I haven't seen a lease come through the county in a situation like this that hasn't had the proper coverage in place for Kenosha County, whether it be at the golf course or anywhere else. I'll let the clerk address the issue as well.
At the finance meeting, when we talked about this, the actual resolution has been added at the bottom, but it wasn't in this one because this is the original one that you got in your packets. That Corporation Counsel will draw up a lease. The lease is not yet, in fact, written, so we can definitely have something in there for the liability.
It is continues to be your prerogative, Supervisor Grulich, if you'd like to make that amendment, but I would trust that that language will be addressed appropriately in any lease.
Well, I believe I cleared my point, so I believe it should be taken care of, so I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through yourself to the clerk, I have a couple of questions. Since we've recently taken a tax deed, how recently was this that we took this deed?
We just took it in January.
In January. Then my next question would be, was this person leasing this parcel already?
Yes,
From the
previous owner.
From the previous owner. So for the last 2 months, what's happened with the property then?
He's actually been using the property without any, without paying any payment.
And did they approach us then, or did we approach them?
He approached us, because at this time he can't financially afford to buy the property. He would like to in the future, purchase the property and have it, but at this point it would deter his business if he did not have parking, so he approached the county and asked if we would have a lease agreement.
Okay, so we're talking about a lease agreement. Now, previously the Corporation Counsel said this would not deter us from following your normal procedures and selling this. Now, in this lease agreement, are we going to be saying that we're not going to put it for sale?
No. No. In the lease agreement, it would say that the property would be open for sale. And the reason why we don't want to put it up for sale at this time is because there's other property in the area that was previously owned by the same owner, so we may want to incorporate it together and sell it all as one and have an advantage to the other parcel.
Have we looked into what this individual was previously paying? And have we looked into what should be charged for that large a parcel? $200 a month certainly doesn't seem fit.
He was paying $200 a month, and the taxes that were collected on it were $218 in 2010, so it's pretty comparable to what taxes would be on the parcel.
That's why the person that owned the parcel is lost the parcel.
Well, they haven't paid it. There were a lot of specials for snow removal and things that they didn't do, so they just let the property go.
They let it go. Okay, you answered all my questions. Thank you.
The Corporation Counsel also indicated that the lease would be drafted subject to the, a sale would be drafted subject to the lease, so it will be covered either way. I have a question, however, back to Supervisor Grulick's comment to Corporation Counsel. If this particular property owner, business owner across the street is continuing to use the property without a lease that is now under county control, under county ownership, what's our exposure there? And my point to this is clearly a lease with the appropriate indemnifications and hold harmless, time is clearly of the essence, if not a need to restrict access until that's done.
That would be correct. If he's there without the lease, he is trespassing. I don't believe there would be any liability on our part for any negligence or incident that occurred due to his activity with respect to a third party. He's trespassing on our property basically at this point. The lease would be in everyone's best interest.
So how quickly will we get a lease drafted?
We have standard forms. We can probably get a lease done within a couple of days, a week.
$200 a month will cover a couple of per diem, so I'd like to get that moving. You got it. Supervisor Rose.
The resolution does not include any names. Who are we talking about here as the possible tenant?
The business is called Big Shots. The specific individuals, unless we have a name, I'm not aware of who they are.
I actually just know his name is Scott, and he called me and over the phone and inquired about the property, and we've talked a couple of times, and he's representing Big Shots. So I'm assuming that when I call him tomorrow and let him know whether or not this went through, that we would have a formal name to put on the lease.
So it's a corporation or it's an individual, or you don't know?
It's an individual. I'm almost sure it's an individual. I'm not, positive.
So we don't know his name, and we don't. I mean, I think we need to have more information on this, even if he is a big shot.
But understand what's before you. What's before you is allowing the clerk the opportunity to take control of the property. At this point in time, there is no authorization of any kind for Scott the Big Shot or anybody else to be on our property. So that's all that's before you. We're not talking about a lease. We're not talking about lease terms. We're not talking about anything other than the clerk being able to take this property. Am I correct?
We're not authorizing the execution of the lease.
No. But the lease hasn't even been drawn up. So all this is doing is authorizing me to talk to Corporation Counsel to draw up a lease. A lease can be brought forth to the Finance Committee. Again, they're my overseer, and they can approve the lease and the wording in the lease before it's signed.
All right.
Anyone else? Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
From Human Service and Finance Committee, Resolution 139, to modify 2011 budget to reprogram budgeted grant funds for the Coverdell Forensic Scientific Improvement Grant. Human Service, Rose, yes. Jeff Gentz, yes. Celebrity, yes. Gable, yes. Arrington, yes. Finance, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gentz, yes. Singer, yes. Eckerness, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
The resolution, I would move Resolution 139.
Resolution 139 moved by Rose, seconded by Clark. Supervisor Rose.
The resolution uses $22,341 to reprogram that for the purchase of certain equipment for the lab, which is outlined in the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the issue? Resolution 139. Seeing no lights, this is a budget modification. Roll call vote. All those in favor of 139 P and plus, those opposed P and minus. One more, out of the room. 24-0, motion carries. Clerk.
Resolution 140 from Human Service Committee, a resolution to oppose the centralization of economic support programs as proposed in the state 2011-2013 biennial budget. Rose, yes. Jeff Gentz, yes. Celery, yes. Gable, yes. Arrington. Abstain or excused.
Not on there. Supervisor Rose.
I would move Resolution 140 in behalf of the Human Services Committee.
Resolution 140 moved by Rose, seconded by Supervisor Jeff Ginn. Supervisor Rose.
A good deal has been stated about the resolution already at the meetings as well as in the press. I would urge your support of it and that it be sent to the governor as well as our legislative direct delegation under the with a cover letter by the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the issue? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 140 signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries. At this point, I'm going to pass the gavel on 141 for the same reason I did on 23.
Resolution 141 from Land Use Committee approving an amendment to the Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan for Kenosha County 2035 for Bank Mutual Incorporated owner, Metz Medical Agent, requests a comprehensive plan amendment from mixed-use district to governmental and institutional district in the town of Summers. Submitted by the Land Use Committee. Brunig, yes. Esposito, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move Resolution 141.
Motion by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Resolution number 141 is an amendment to the Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan for Kenosha County 2035 for the Bank Mutual Incorporated. Wisconsin state statutes require resolution from the Land Use Committee and an ordinance from the full county board to amend the comprehensive plan. The resolution allows for an amendment to map 65, which was adopted land use map for Kenosha County 2035 of the Kenosha County Comprehensive Plan to change the land use category on the Bank Mutual Inc. property in the town of Summers from mixed use to governmental and institutional. The town of Summers recommended the approval and the request. Thank you.
Seeing no lights, all those on the question, aye? Chair votes aye. Opposed?
I'll let the record show that I'll abstain on 141 as I did on 23.
The ayes have it, so ordered.
Communication 16 from George E. Melcher, Director of Planning and Development regarding future rezonings.
Refer to land use. I'm sorry. Refer to planning, zoning, and extension education.
Oh. That's a mouthful.
I'm gonna need a scorecard. Planning development.
Approval of the April 12, 2011 minutes by Supervisor Boyd Frederick.
Supervisor Frederick.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented, second by Supervisor Esposito. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Motion to adjourn sin die. Supervisor Kubicki, second by Supervisor Michael. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned. Organizational meeting. Roll call of supervisors. Being plus. Two more. We need supervisor. One more. Aaron Noble. 25 in attendance. Same three are excused. Citizen comments. Anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Announcements of the chairman, I have none. Supervisor report. Supervisor Clark.
After all the committees meet, because several of them are on the Finance Committee will meet right up in front when you guys get done with your individual committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Clark. Anyone else? Supervisor reports. Seeing none. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor Gintz. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.